ask them questions to make sure that they are the one who did it, they answer me, but I'm sure the style of writing, it's not an undergraduate dental student. And the other thing, when I took this assignment and check in the AI humanizing, the AI detector, some of the students they pass this tool. However, I'm sure they are not the one who write it. Actually, doctor, what we are doing in my university, we are not preventing students or prohibiting them from using AI, yet we are enable them how to use it. Because doctor, what I believe from my inside, if we go back to like 1950s, 1960s, or the time for the calculator and the time for the computer become it's a pop thing, a lot of university they are preventing their students from using the calculator, the calculator that using the algorithm, the one with the battery, and they ask them to use the regular manual calculation method. And nowadays, doctor, we are using the technology, the computer, the tablets, these technologies that authentic teachers try to um, take it away from the education path years ago, and now it is, if we need it or if we want or if we disagree or agree, it is embedded with us, the technology. I believe now in the era of AI, we are living the same turning, the shifting period like 50 years ago. If we don't understand that AI, it is like a tool that we have to enable our students. And yes, I understand your point of view that you want to teach them the original way of searching and having these skills. But, doctor, if you know how to do it in the right way, teach us, because for us as a faculty, we cannot prevent the student from using AI.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. Um, I've heard that position, and the question I have is, because I'm actually writing a study now, I'm almost finished, about AI and anxiety and apprehension. And one of the things when I did my exit interviews with my students, one of the things I found interesting was they all, for the most part, most groups say, you know what, we don't want to use this because we're going to be dependent on it. And one of my questions, and they kept on saying that throughout the exit, and I wasn't prompting them to say it. They were honestly saying this to me. Hey, look, we don't worry, because I even asked them if next year we taught you how to write a decent prompt into AI so to get the response that you want, would you? They would say, yeah, we would like that. However, we don't want to be dependent on AI. And I thought that was very mature of them because, yes, you're not going to be able to stop them. That is absolutely true. But going back to what we talked about yesterday, if you know your students, right, and you know the learner profile, right, you know that you know your students, you know the learner profile, you know whether you know their writing abilities, right, then you can challenge them on it, right. You can definitely challenge them on their writing, and yes, a lot of them are going to be ahead of the curve because they're going to read that paper to defend themselves that they wrote it, right. But we can do something as simple as, okay, if you wrote this paper, I want you to paraphrase paragraph 2. They're not going to be able to do it
Mhm.
because they didn't write it.
Yeah.
Right? They can tell you what paragraph 2 says, but they're not going to be able to actually rewrite that paragraph 2 and paraphrase it because they didn't write it. They didn't go and they didn't read, and AI generated a response. And that makes my point. Because the reality is, when they need to explain things to people and they actually have to be in the real world is not about writing papers. The real world is about, at that moment, do I have the skill set to solve a problem at that moment when I can't jump on my phone or jump on my laptop, right, and get an AI response
Mhm.
at that moment, right? Doc, hey doc, if a patient is coming to you in your dental office and they're running in, right? And they're running in and they're bleeding from their mouth. and they need immediate care.
Intervention.
You don't have time to go, uh, hold on a second. Let me go into Claude real quick and see what I'm supposed to do here. You don't have time. What you're going to do is say boom, 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 and you're going to connect all your experiences that even if you never saw this case before, even if you never saw this case before, you're going to take your collective experience, right? And you're going to do something. And that something might be just to stabilize them. It might not, but you do something based on your experience until you can get on the phone and get a specialist in. But you can do something to solve the problem based on your experience, right? And you can do that independent at this stage in your career. You can do that independent of any technology, right?
Right.
Even if it's just to stabilize them. And you could do it much better than I could do it because you are a trained professional. And again, you may have never saw that case before. Never. But you could say, no, you do this, 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 and this. No, don't do that. Don't hit, don't, no, we don't need ice. Because if we use ice, it's going to do dot, dot, dot. And we need this and put some this and put the pressure here, right? I can't do that because I don't have that experience. I don't have that point of reference, right? I'm gonna say take a Tylenol. Take a Tylenol. Put some alcohol on it. I don't have an experience. And that came through what? Experience. That came through your clinicals. That came through reading. That came through teaching. So basically you are prepared to solve problems with little to no support. What scares me about today's generation, especially Zers, is that they're so reliant on going to the internet. What happens when there's no more power? What happens if the grid goes down?
Their mind will be shifted off because they did not train their mind to think.
What what happens when the grid goes down?
Mm.
What happens when the power goes out? Einstein said the difference between ancient man and modern man is the bow and arrow. It's the bow and arrow. And he was absolutely, I think it's one of the most important things, essential things he ever said, because today or tomorrow, if something happened, and we saw this during now, I saw it during 9/11 in America, right? Um, we didn't really see it during COVID because the trucks still came in. But what happens if trucks, especially in a place like Riyadh, what happens if something happened to the supply chain and trucks were not able, and airports were closed down, and trucks weren't able to go from to the sea to Jeddah to Riyadh and bring essential goods? What would men be able? And I think more so in Saudi, a lot of men would be able to do it, but not in America and not in other places. And even here in Saudi, there would be a lot of men who would just go hungry. There'll be some men who will be fine. I'm okay. I'm gonna go out, get my bow and arrow. I'm gonna go out and and I'm gonna kill this, and we're gonna eat what they call gub. What's the lizard? Gub. What is it called? The
Bob,
lizard.
Bob, Bob.
Gub.
You know Bob, doctor.
We're gonna go out and eat some thub. You know what I mean? But then there's some people that would go hungry,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's an important thing that Einstein said. And I think ultimately that's our role as educators. Our role as educators, and I don't disagree with I have a love-hate relationship with AI I love AI in my personal life, but when it comes to teaching and learning, I have a love-hate relationship. Why? Because we have to find that balance when we offer it. Yes, AI is appropriate, in my humble opinion, when the student already can operate independently. It's appropriate, right? It's it's like no, I'm not gonna get into it. I want to get too long because we need to get into these modules. But I do want to, but I think it's an important conversation that if we have time, we'll continue. Let's do this. I'm going to share the exit ticket responses from yesterday so we can look at those. Okay, here the exit, some of the exit, well, all of them. Somebody has been naughty because I've only received 4 exit tickets, and I should have what 5 yesterday. But maybe uh, well, we'll see. So the first question yesterday was, in your own words, what is the difference between a teacher and an educator? What do you want to be? And what would that require of you? And someone said, I don't know who, said a teacher is someone who teaches and mainly focuses on giving students lessons and taking control of the classroom, while an educator gives lessons to individuals with the aim of shaping learning outcomes. I like to be an educator because I enjoy keeping learners growing and allowing them to make a positive difference in students' lives by supporting their learning journey and personal and social development. Okay, that's what one person said. Another person said, an educator goes deeper. He or she not only teaches content, but also shapes thinking, builds character, helps learners grow, not just in school, but in life. I want to be an educator, not just a teacher. Another person said, a teacher mainly teaches subjects and helps students pass exams, while an educator also focuses on the child's character, confidence, emotion, and growth. An educator inspires learners and understands that every child learns differently. I want to be an educator because I want my students not only to learn English and math, but also feel safe, confident, and loved in class. This will require me to be patient, creative, understanding, and willing to keep learning better ways to teach my students. This is an excellent response. Um, teacher is the one who teaches students a subject or a skill within the class. Educator educates and develops the total well-being, like help them grow and guiding over all learning and character building in off course, and and teachers too, but they build the student. I'm just reading someone's words. They are not only subject oriented, they are also mentors. For me, I want to become an educator. I should gain good knowledge, communication skills, patience, and continuous learning. It should create a comfortable and fun, friendly environment for my students. All right. So I think you guys covered the essence of what we talked about when we talked about that. Spoke about that. So choose one, brain structure, the RES, the reticular activating system, amygdala, or frontal lobe, and describes specific thing that you would do or stop doing as a result of understanding how it works. I choose the amygdala since it controls emotions. I'll pause before reacting to emotions because the amygdala triggers quick fight and flight and freeze. Remember, don't forget freeze before the brain processes the situation. So instead of reacting, I'll calm down first. That is, oh my God, that's a key. As an educator, as the person in the classroom, in charge of the classroom, you have to stay calm. All right. Even when that little brat gets under your skin, or the teacher next door gets under your skin, or the principal comes and gets under your skin, that you have to stay calm at all times. I think that's critical. Someone says, I'll choose the amygdala because it controls reactions, especially fear and anger. I'll stop reacting immediately when I feel upset and stressed. Very good. Someone says, I'll choose the amygdala because it's connected to emotions and stress. Understanding this helps me realize that when children feel scared, embarrassed, or stressed, learning becomes harder for them. Absolutely. Because of this, I will stop correcting students harshly. If I have time, I didn't build it in this course, but there's a module that I give called understanding errors, mistakes and errors. Oh, excuse me, noticing errors and mistakes, which speaks to this. If I have time, I'll try to slide that in if I don't go too far off tangent, maybe today or tomorrow, because I think that's important to cover. Because of this, I'll stop correcting students harshly in front of others. Instead, I will encourage them gently and create a classroom where I can feel safe and try to make mistakes, and where people feel comfortable with making mistakes. Important. It's important to create a scenario where students feel comfortable with making mistakes. All right, choose one, the RES amygdala frontal lobe. and describe, okay, I'll choose the RES. The reticular activating system. If the start isn't attractive in the classroom, the rest will be bored. It would be it'd be way too difficult for a teacher or educator to build fun and stress-free environment, and the student will feel very difficult to learn. So it depends on how you start. Your starting is energetic, you gain student focus. In the end, you will be with a good result. I would never lecture the student. I would have the student-centered learning. I will have student-centered learning, and I'll allow them to ask questions as much as they can. Very good. All right. Next question was crashing. The effective filter can block language acquisition. Describe a moment from your own learning history when the filter was high. What caused it? Someone say, I remember when I was in an interview, I was asked a question that I actually knew the answer to. But because I was nervous and under pressure, I forgot everything at that moment. After the interview, I remembered the answers clearly. My effective filter was high because of anxiety, fear, and lack of confidence at that time. That this experience helped me understand how emotions can affect learning and performance. Absolutely. Um, crashing. Let's see, crashing. This person didn't answer that question. What is the that was interview. This person says, my one-time effective filter was high and I had to speak English in front of others, and I was not confident. What caused it was fear of making mistakes and being judged about pronunciation and grammar. You know, the biggest anxiety that people have is speaking in front of other people, whether it's in English, Spanish, whatever. It's the biggest anxiety in the world. It's the biggest phobia in the world is speaking in front of other people. Um, so, you know, that's just what it is. Our brain doesn't want to be judged and criticized. Since I teach higher grades and being an educator in English and social studies, I experienced a high filter while doing a demo on the subject. When I was being interviewed. I felt nervous when delivering the lesson correctly at the same time worried about making mistakes. While explaining key concepts, and because of the anxiety, I became less hesitant in my explanations. My concern about being judged raised my effective filter and reduced my ability to teach smoothly at that time. Yeah, that's just how it is. We don't want to be judged. People don't speak because they don't want to be judged. Um, what is one belief about learners that you had before today that you're now questioning? This person says that quiet students and non-engaging students don't understand anything in class. I now understand that engagement can look different on different learners, and silence does not mean lack of understanding. Absolutely. Uh, this person says, now that I'm questioning, this person says, one belief I used to hold is that learners improve mainly when they are corrected. Now I'm questioning. How am I starting to see? Now I'm starting to see that too much correction can raise anxiety and lower confidence. Yeah, I really should do that. Mistakes versus anxiety. Error module. Um, this person says, before today, I sometimes believe that students who do not practice are simply not interested in learning. Now I'm questioning that belief because I understand that some learners may be anxious, afraid of failure, distracted, or learning in different ways. Absolutely. The last question is more personal. I'm going to say this. Think about this. A student, yesterday we talked about the difference between a learner and a student, right? A student can actually, a learner, because we agree that we want our students to be learners, right? We want to transition them from learners to students, right? Depending on the situation, a learner can fail the class and a student can get an A+ in the class. Let me say that again. A learner can fail the class and a student can get an A+ in the class. And there are many reasons. Number one, it depends on who the teacher is. See, a teacher is not going to be able to handle a learner. Remember, we talked about teacher versus educator, right? A teacher may not be able to handle a learner. A learner sometimes asks those questions that teachers don't know or don't even want to preach, right? So the teacher starts to dislike the learner because the learner is now questioning the teacher. The educator and the learner gets fine and well, because the educator can say to the learner, "Hey, learner, I don't know the answer to that question. Give me a couple of days and I'll get back with you." Right? The teacher will never say that, because the teacher got to be in charge, and the teacher has to be all knowing. We call it the sage on the stage. So the moment that learner asks the teacher a question that's not in the textbook, that's not on a PowerPoint slide, woo! And that teacher gonna be furious at that learner. Oh, I can't stand that. I can't. I hope she absent today. Right? Right? So what could happen is also the learner, if they're taking an assessment that is poorly written, let me say, listen to me, because we had this conversation yesterday. If they're taking an assessment that is poorly written, and to the answers in the MCQ could possibly, and because they're a learner, they actually research the lecture you gave them and figured out that there was some nuance in that lecture you gave them. So when they read your poorly written MCQ exam question, they go, well, B and D, B and D is the answer. It could be B and D. It could be B and D. Then they pick D. You're thinking B. You have B as the answer, and they get it wrong. And then they go to you, but no, I read on this. And you go, no, that's not what I said in the lecture. That's not what I said. That's not what the textbook said. That's not what the textbook said. And then they failed the exam. It happens a lot. And then what do you think happens over a while with that learner? Over time with that learner, what they going to do? They either A, going to turn to a student because they're going to recognize what it takes to get a good score in a grade, or they're going to say, you know what, the teacher doesn't like me. School is not for me. I don't do well on tests. I'm not good in math. I'm not good in social studies. I'm not good in science, because they had a couple of experiences with some teachers who wasn't praising their curiosity and wasn't praising their defiance. And they say, this school thing is not for me. I'm not a good student. This is why it's essential. It is critical that you change your mindset from teacher to educator, because you could be possibly destroying a child's life, a young person's life, not even a child, a learner's life, whether they're young or old, because you are in teacher mode instead of educator mode. All right. I said I was going to finish up module 6 because we didn't finish module 6. We did talk about crashing. In a TESOL course, you have to talk about, if you read your course notes, you have to talk about Chomsky's universal grammar theory. Okay. And Chomsky, Noam Chomsky. Who is Noam Chomsky? Well, Noam Chomsky is a brilliant, very smart social scientist. He's actually spoke here in Riyadh, so I think at least one time. He's been here since I've been here, and he came up with this theory called the universal grammar theory. And basically, what it says is that our brains are wired. God gave us a pre-installed app, right? So when we're born, we get some pre-installed apps, right? Some apps we have to download through school, through learning, we download the apps that we want. That's an important, I want you to keep that concept. Keep that concept in your mind. The idea that we download the apps that we want on our phone. Our body is our phone. Our body is our device. So we download the apps that we want. The apps that we're forced to have, we download them and then we uninstall them when we don't need them anymore. You see?
Mhm.
Students will keep things in their short-term memory or their working memory for the test, for the exam, and then uninstall that information after the exam is over. That's why you can go to that same student 2 weeks later and ask them the same question that they got an A on the exam and they would fail the exam in 2 weeks because they brained up the information. They're not keeping those apps. But then there's some apps that come mandatory with our phone, with our life. And what Chomsky says is language is one of those apps that comes mandatory. Um, and that our brain is pre-wired to produce to grammar. We're pre-wired to grammar. It's just natural. We're naturally pre-wired to grammar. And that's why you could take a child at 2, 3 years old and he can learn English, he can learn Arabic, he can learn Spanish, she can learn many different languages. And the older we get and we don't use that app a lot, that app doesn't get updated. So every time we learn a language or we read and we use language, that app updates all the time, right? But if we only use in one language, that the older we get, the app never updates. But if we keep on learning languages and we're speaking different languages, we can become polyglots. You know what a polyglot is, right?
Oh,
A
yeah.
polyglot is somebody who speaks multiple languages, 8, 9, 10 languages.
Mm.
That's called a polyglot. And the reason, Kobe Bryant, the famous basketball player who died in the helicopter crash, he was a polyglot. But Kobe Bryant spoke like 8 languages. Why? Because when he was a child, his family would move around, so he spoke many different languages. Right? Why? Because Chomsky would say that we are pre-wired to grammar, right? And in essence, grammaring is a template that if we use it, we can actually pick up any language. Okay, so why is that important to the context of teaching and learning? The reality is every child, every person can learn a language. Older people is going to be more difficult because their app hasn't been updated. Younger people is going to be easier because they're continuously updated because in their L1, their L1 is their language, native language. In their L1, they're even learning their L1, right? So when they get to L2, they're updating it, they are because they're learning their L1, it's a great time to learn another language because that app is always being updated, right? So when they learn the L3 and the L4 and L5, they can continue because the app is continuously being updated. Okay. Uh, so you have to have the stimulus, right? You have to have the inputs. If you don't have the input, then again, that app, I'm trying to explain it in a way where it makes sense to you. That if you don't have the stimulus, the inputs coming in, and you're not challenging yourself, right? It's the same thing with reading and writing. The more you write, the better you become a writer you're going to become. The more anything. If you go out and learn how to play a musical instrument, right? The more you play that musical instrument, the better you're going to get at it. The moment you stop, what's going to happen? You're gonna forget how to play. You're not gonna play as well, right? I know people. I used to know Spanish, right? I took Spanish for 6 years. 2 years. Well, actually, for 4 years. I took Spanish for 4 years, and then I stopped using it. I couldn't. I know some words. I can read some words. I couldn't. I couldn't. I can't understand it now. I can't speak it now because I haven't spoken it in years. I haven't had that input, right? Um, so the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. All right. That is, in a nutshell, universal grammar. I can get deeper in it, but the key that you need to know as a teacher is that feel confident to know that every student can learn anything. Because if you can learn grammar, you can learn math, you can learn anything. It's just how consistent is that stimulus, right? So think about that as you're designing your lesson plans. And we're going to talk today about how to do that in ways that's interesting and creates a pragmatic stimulus for your learners. Now, I have a question for you guys because, again, I don't want to be talking the whole time here. If language is acquired, because that's what we're talking about is acquisition, rather than taught, if language is acquired rather than taught, remember we said yesterday that Diane Lawson Freeman said what? Students do not learn because we what? What was that quote? Students do not learn because we
don't teach.
Teach. Students do not learn because we teach. Willis said, what was learned is not necessarily what was taught. What was learned was not necessarily what was taught. Diane Lawson Freeman also said that teaching does not cause what? Teaching does not cause learning. Okay? Teaching does not cause learning. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we don't teach anyone. That's why I said yesterday, stop calling yourself a teacher. You don't teach anyone anything. People teach themselves. What we do is recreate an environment, a condition, and we provide the stimulus and the inputs where the student goes, it's kind of like a cat. You know cats. Anybody have a cat? I have not my cats, right? And cats, yeah, oh, I got you beat. I got the neighborhood cats, the compound cats. Well, if you have cats, they are so finicky. They are so finicky, right?
Yes.
You can have some chicken and you put it out for.
They don't eat.
I don't want that. I want that lamb you had yesterday. Where's that lamb you had yesterday? Right? And they will knock over the chicken. They'll start destroying the bread. I want that lamb, right? That's how we are as learners. We're very finicky. So as teachers, we have to find that lamb. And unfortunately, we have a class. See, the reality versus what is needed, right? We have a class of 25 people. Some of them want lamb, some of them want chicken, some want fish, some are vegetarians, some of them not hungry, some of them want some water. And you have to create an environment that satisfies. It's a little bit different in university. In university, remember, in university is not pedagogy. In university, it's andragogy. So in university, we say, this is what we're giving you, and you take it. But that's not the case in pedagogy. In pedagogy, and it kind of goes back to what the conversation we had about AI. In pedagogy, we set learners up for andragogy because andragogy is the real world, right? Your boss is going to say, this is what I want you to do it. The boss is not going to say, do you want chicken? Do you want lamb? Do you want some soup? Your boss is not going to do that. The boss is going to say, you're going to eat the chicken and you're going to clean your plate. Right? But in order to get learners to the point of dealing with an andragogical world, we must give them stimulus in a pedagogical sense so they can deal with it, what we call scaffolding. You know, scaffolding is an important concept in teaching and learning. All right, scaffolding. And you remember that guy crashing with the effector filter? All right, he also had another theory called I+1. So when you're teaching anyone anything, especially languages, but it applies to anything. We see this in math, actually. When you're teaching someone, you give them one bit of information first. They master that one bit, and then you give them another bit of information. that is related to the other information that they learn. You give them one bite at a time. It's that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. All right. And in teaching, we call it scaffolding. We scaffold, right? If I'm a math teacher, I don't start off by teaching fractions. I start off by teaching how to add, right? And then we go how to add, and then we go to subtraction, and then we go from subtraction to multiplication to division, and then we start to look at wholes, and then halves, and then quarters, and then thirds, and we say this is a numerator and this is a denominator. We do it step by step, and that's what lesson plans are about. And micro teaching, we do it step by step, right? So it's important that you understand universal grammar to understand that every student, every learner in that classroom has the ability to do it. You just have to figure out what they need to get there. Okay. The learner profile in module 6, we already talked about the learner profile yesterday. All right. Just so we're clear, what is the learner profile? The learner profile is not a label. It is not a label. With the learner profile, it is an active, yesterday we call it a database. Remember I asked you the question, how are you what? What was the question I asked? When I said, what do you do the first 2 weeks? And then I asked you what? What was the follow-up question I asked everyone? How are you what?
How are you recording?
How are you documenting? How are you recording? Because it's one thing to do the act. What is your favorite color? What is your favorite video game? What did you do last summer? What type of food do you like? Where do you like to sit in class? That's all great. But if you're not documenting it and keeping an active documentation, because today the favorite color is blue. Tomorrow it may be green. Now you going out using blue, thinking blue is their favorite color. It has changed in the last 3 months. You see? So as teachers, we have to create a learner profile. And it has to be something tangible that you can look at, not stored in your memory. Whether it's a file, a portfolio, that's the power of portfolios. See, in education, we misuse portfolios. We begin to use them as a way to evaluate teachers. No, of portfolios is a way to get what type of data? What data did we talked about that yesterday? What type of data is that? Guess with a Q. Qualitative, right? It's a way to get qualitative and quantitative data. We want to know the qualitative stuff, the subjective stuff, the things they like, right? What they want, what they need, what they expect. That's the qualitative stuff, right? And then it's also a way to get the quantitative stuff, right? What are they able to do? If I'm the gym teacher, if I'm the physical ed teacher, can they jump 3 meters? Right?
No, these data will help me to analyze and predict and
Give
forecast.
me against what, Doc? The standards. Right? Remember what we talked about the standards, right? Because if I look and I see right now they're able to jump, I'm the phys ed teacher. They're able to jump 3 meters. But what says they have to jump 6 meters in
The
this class?
baseline. The baseline
The
that we
standard,
have.
the standards. The standards that you have. Remember the standards, right? Shake your head, Carol. Yes, I remember the standards. Yes. Irene, you remember the standards? Right? The standards.
Yes, I remember.
Where did the standards come from?
From
From the textbook.
from the
Of the
learning.
textbook. Where's the textbook getting the standards from? Where's the textbooks getting the standards from?
From collecting data about
From the
researching
government. From the government.
the cover.
From the Ministry of Education. They get different. No, not from the curriculum. The curriculum comes after the standards. You cannot have a curriculum until you have standards. Remember, the standards are the what we learn. Who establishes what we learn? Well, the people who's paying for the school,
Okay.
right? So as an American, in most countries, in Saudi Arabia, the
NC
ministry, the Ministry of Education and other people say these are what that's yes, everything I talk about, they all are combined. I don't ever compartmentalize everything. Everything makes sense together. So remember, the first thing that we said is what? We talked about the history of education. Then I told you that education is not for the learner or the student. It's for who?
Society?
It's for the entire society. And that's not a bad thing. But education is not for the individual learner. Education is for the society. Because if I am Saudi Arabia and I take out of my GDP for the year, I take $100 billion, 100 billion reals, and I set it aside for education, right? I'm not concerned about Ashwak's want, needs, and expectations. I'm not concerned that Ashrak wants to be a dentist. No, I'm looking at the societal needs. And I'm saying the society needs engineers, the society needs cardiologists, the society needs psychiatrists, the society needs these things, police officers, right? And I am going to take that $100 billion and say, schools, here are the standards. Because these standards are going to create the dentists I need, the cardiologists I need. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? Right? And if you don't like that, then you better have enough money to pay for private education. Make sense?
Makes sense.
So in a poorer country, think about it. In a poorer country where they don't have a high GDP, they have to be very strict about their standards, right? Because they don't have a lot of money to spend on schools. So they got to say, all right, here are the top, where Saudi might say, here are the top 100 things we need in the next 20 years. In a poorer country, they can say, here's the top 10 things we need in the next 20 years, right? Because they don't have as much money, right? In a country like America, we got so much money in America, we can say, here's the top 2,000 things we need in the next 20 years. There's a lot more flexibility, right? So if I want to be an artist, I can get a scholarship to go and paint and travel the world painting, right? Whereas if you're in Haiti, they're not paying for your education to go and travel the world for paint.
You're right.
The little pictures you find interesting. They don't have the money for that. So understand that education is not for the learner. Now, that does not mean we don't have student-centered learning. Because you as the educator says, this is what the society needs, and here's what I'm going to do for you as a personal connection. Right? If you really want to be that painter, all right, I'm going to do things that continues to aspire you to be a painter, but I also need you to be a dentist too. So you could be a dentist and a painter. Because I know that to motivate you, to keep you motivated, I gotta give you some painting stuff. But I also have to be brave enough. Remember Dr. Camara Devello in the post-method condition, possibilities, right? I have to be brave enough to tell you, look, we are in Haiti. I am sure you're going to be the best painter that Haiti ever has. However, you got to go out and be a dentist first and use the money from the dentistry to fund your painting career. Because that's the reality. So that's why I say you are not your students' friends. You're not your learners' friends. You're their mentor. You're their guide. See, a friend never has any responsibility. Oh, yes, you can go out and be a painter. Yes, you can do it. Yes, you can be whatever you want to be. Whereas the mentor says, hey, look, I would love for you to be a painter, but we got to do some other things first. And that could be a difficult conversation to have, especially when everyone else in the world is saying, you can be whatever you want to be.
The
You can be
motivation.
whatever you want to be, right? So if you're in a country where it's extremely chauvinistic and women cannot be the head of state, you're going to tell a little girl she can be whatever she want to be? No, because she can't be the head of state, right? You got to be real with her. Listen, this
Really.
is a patriarchal society, and what I can inspire you to be is to be an agent of change. But I'm not going to sit up here and tell you the story, this lie that you can be whatever you want to be. But I can also help make you become an agent of change, right? But there's some things that we need to do that, right? All right. So that is the learner profile. I'm going to create an app for you guys in the next couple of days through AI, by the way. It's going to be a learner profile app. So you can document each student and do it ongoing, make it a perpetual documentation, and connect that learner profile for lesson plans. So what we call it personalized, not differentiating the instruction, but personalizing the instruction. We'll talk about the difference between differentiation and personalizing. All right, today, let me show you what our objectives are today. Give me 1 second. Today, we are going to, hopefully I saved it. Yeah. Let's get out of here. All right, today, all right. So here's our objective for today. We're going to distinguish between curriculum standards, expected outcomes, and actual outcomes. We already did that yesterday, didn't we? So we don't have to do that. We did that yesterday. We went to that in detail yesterday. So we could take that off on our list. We're also going to describe 3 stages of backwards design and explain why planning begins with outcomes. We kind of covered that a little bit yesterday, but I want to get into more detail. 3, we're going to identify essential components of a unit plan and a daily lesson plan. 4, today we're going to write smart learning objectives using a Bloom's taxonomy verb. We're also going to place Bloom's original 6 levels in correct hierarchical order and give an example of each task. We're going to talk about Probably's best method, and its implications for teaching preparation. We mentioned Probably yesterday, so I don't think we need to really cover that today. Remember, that was just this concept that there's no best method. There's no one best way to do anything in teaching and learning. You have to get as many tools in your toolbox, you know? So like men, I hate to be chauvinistic, but men, a lot of men, I don't know about today's men of my generation and before, right? We love toolboxes. We get a toolbox, right? And we put our pliers, we put our hammers, we put our screwdrivers, we get all different types of screwdrivers. You know, if let me just show you my toolbox. Give me a second. Here is my toolbox. I don't know if can you see my toolbox? Let me see. Let me stop sharing for a second. This is my toolbox. This is one of many toolboxes. I have many toolboxes, right? I have many toolboxes. I have many tools. Now, here's the thing. I don't do a lot of tooling, but I have all these tools. Why? Because I'm a man. Man has to have tools, right? So if I open my toolbox, I have all types of stuff in my table. I have screwdrivers, all different types of screwdrivers. I got a saw to cut down stuff with.
Almost new.
I got pliers, wire cutters, more types of screwdrivers.
You never
I
use it.
got grip pliers. I got a big hammer. I got a small hammer. I got tape. What do you got? I got all types of stuff, right? More screwdrivers, more tape. I got screws, the things, the nails and screws. I have bolts, right? Why? Why do I have all these things? You said all new because I don't use them.
Yeah, you don't use
Because
it.
I end up calling somebody to actually do the work. But why do I have all these things? Because I'm a man. That's what a man's supposed to have tools.
No, because
Well,
usually the responsibility to do such things.
because the reality is my wife expects me that if something goes on and I can't what? I can't call the maintenance. If something happens at 3 o'clock in the morning and maintenance is not able to come, or my friend calls me and say, Ray, I'm in a jam. I need some tools. I need to be able to solve that problem. And the stuff in this box and my other tools help me solve that problem. It's the same thing with teachers. You're in this course today because hopefully I give you some tools to help you solve problems. You might not face the problem until next year. You see, as Dr. Ashrak showed, I got some stuff still in the wrapper because I haven't had to face that problem yet. But when that problem comes,
You have
I'm
it.
ready. I have it. I don't have to call New Minutes. I don't have to call Amazon. And more importantly, when the power goes out, I have my tools. You see? And that's what teaching is about. And that's what learning is about. It's about having the tools in your toolkit to be able to address problems. And then we model it. See, I model this. So when my son gets older and has his family, he knows because he saw dad with what? A toolbox. So he says, I gotta get a toolbox too. Right? I gotta get my own toolbox. Right? And instead of saying, Dad, can I borrow your toolbox? He's gonna say, no, I need to get my own toolbox. Right? And that's the same thing that you do for your learners, is you model. You're not there to teach them anything. You're there to be an example of what it is to be an ideal person in the world. So they're to look at you. That's why I said, I don't want you guys taking notes. I'll give you the notes. This course notes are already here for you. I want you to look at me, hear me, ask me questions, right? Because that is what teaching and learning is about. A lot of you in your last question, when I asked you what you wanted to learn specifically, you guys want a lot of anecdotes. Teaching and learning is not about anecdotes. Right? Well, how do I do this? How do I keep my students interested? I don't know. Let me say this. I do not know how to keep your students interested. You know why? I don't have your students. I don't know anything about your students. I don't know how to keep them interested. If I came into your classroom today and tomorrow, I'm gonna have the same problems you have in keeping them interested. I'm keeping up. Listen, the one thing about Dr. Ray is Dr. Ray gonna keep it real. I'm not gonna sit up here and be phony with you. I'm not gonna sit up there and go, oh, you do this, and you gotta do this, and if you do this, and if you make your colors this, and if you turn the lights on, and if you do this, and if you clap your hands 2 times. No, the reality is those things sometimes work for some people under certain conditions. All right. But what I will tell you is if you learn a profile, and you learn about your students, you will then automatically know what to do to keep them interested. But you have to take the time to learn a profile. You can't just go in and jumping in. See, a lot of times teachers want to go in like they're Superman and Superwoman. I'm Dr. Ray, and I have all the answers to your problems. Dun, 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 dun. And you don't. And see what happens. See, the students think that's the teacher. The teacher can solve my problems, just like Superman and Superwoman. And then when you can't solve their problems, guess what happens? They become what? Disappointed in you.
Questioning you.
Because you set this high standard. I'm the teacher. Listen to me. And then when they got an issue and you're not able to solve it, they go, you are phony. You're a scammo. You know what? That's when that amygdala, that's when that reticular activating system and that amygdala go, man, that ain't nothing but a phone. Don't listen to her, man. Oh, she said that she was going to keep us safe. But when that other teacher came in here and started yelling at us, she ain't do nothing about it. She just sat there and watched. Right? Right? You have to make sure that you set the proper expectations for your learners. Maham said, this is the biggest fear I have. I don't want to know everything. What if they ask me a question, right? The reality is that should accept it. You, listen, Maham, you want your students to ask you questions that you don't know the answer to. That's why you know you're doing good stuff. You are teaching well when they're asking you questions you don't know the answer to, because that means their minds are new. They're going curious now. Teacher, what about this and what about that? And you should easily say and happily say, I don't know the answer to that, but give me a couple of days or give me until tomorrow, and trust me, I'm going to give you some type of answer. And you want to help explore with me that answer? Because that is real world. Okay? You don't have to be the sage on the stage. All right, let's go back to this. I need to give you guys a break too.
Yes.
That Lawson Freeman, complexity. We're going to talk about complexity theory. We're going to describe complexity theory. We're going to articulate the difference between Thomason teaching down and teaching up. And then we're going to distinguish between validity and reliability and explain why over-reliance on standardized assessments is a professional problem. Now, I'm going to give you guys a 10-minute break. Okay? Before I give you the 10-minute break, I want you to look at my objectives here. And I modeled something for you. Can anybody tell me what I modeled here? Anyone? Well, I modeled a couple of things. Number one, I modeled the idea that, and I didn't do this yesterday, by the way, because I wasn't feeling 100% yesterday. You can see my energy level was a lot higher than it was yesterday. I was not feeling well. First thing, anytime you teach anyone anything, you tell them what they're going to learn for that module. Always. Hey guys, today we're going to learn 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? This helps the RES. This helps the reticular activating system. Okay. Today we're going to learn 1, 2, 3, and 4 because it will solve this problem or it will help you do this, right? Oh, okay. Then the RES goes, okay, go ahead over to the amygdala and see what the amygdala says about it. The amygdala goes, yeah, okay, I can rock with that. Yeah, it sounds like I got some benefit out of that. And then the amygdala would send it to the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe would do the business. So first, always tell your students what they're going to learn. Give them the objectives for the course, okay? The second thing I modeled is these are all SMART objectives. And we're going to talk about SMART. These are all SMART objectives. I want you to just look at them. Just look at the first one. Distinguish between curriculum standards, expected outcomes, and actual outcomes. Describe the 3 stages of backwards design and explain. These are all SMART. When we get to the module dealing with SMART, it will make a lot of sense. All right, it's 3:17. Come back at 3:30 and we'll breeze through the modules we have for day 2. All right, come back at 3:30. All right. Are we all back in? This is a roll call.
Yes, doctor.
Love,
Thank you.
love to see you guys' beautiful faces in the places. All right. Carol, are you with us? Irene, are you with us? Haven't heard from you at all, Irene, today.
Me, I'm here.
I'm here.
All right. All right. Let's see here. One second. All right. Before we go into the modules, a lot of the modules for day 2 we've discussed, but the bread and butter that we're going to spend a lot of time on is what we're going to talk about now. But I wanted to emphasize or give you the theoretical framework. So as educators, we have to understand that we're academics, and we can't just come up with stuff out of thin air. All right, we come up with stuff out of thin air, or we duplicate or replicate what someone else has said. Something we saw from LinkedIn. You know, we saw some infographic on LinkedIn, and all we're doing is committing the fashion statement that I mentioned earlier. Anytime you talk about education with anyone, you should be able to come up with a theoretical framework. All right, a theoretical framework, and that supports your position, because you're saying that I've researched this, right? There's a lot of other people who said the same thing. I'm just not coming up with this out of thin air. All right. So my theoretical framework for my educational philosophy is a guy named Vygotsky. Okay. And Vygotsky he's way back in the 20th century, but I call him the father, and I think many people call him the father of student-centered learning. All right. The father of what we call social constructivism. So I'm a social constructivist, right? I believe as a teacher, as an educator, that we learn in social structures and a social construct, and that we build learning from dealing with one another. That's how we build learning. Now, everyone's not a social constructivist, right? But if you are student-centered learning driven, if you believe in student-centered learning, then hopefully you're a social constructivist. And to understand social constructivism, you have to know Vygotsky. Vygotsky has come up with a couple of things that are very important, especially for someone who's a social constructivist. And social constructivism, by the way, is kind of the thing that everyone, whether you know you're a social constructivist or not, if you talk about student-centered learning, you're saying that you're a social constructivist. All right. And again, what that means is you believe that learning is developed through interaction, the people interacting with people, and that we build knowledge through that interaction. Okay? That's social constructivism in a nutshell. All right. Vygotsky came up with two things. Vygotsky said, in order for a person, especially a young person, we're talking about pedagogy here. Okay? That's K through 12. Vygotsky says, in order for a young person, especially all your elementary school teachers, listen up. that you got to have what they call an MKO, a more knowledgeable person, or he's MKO, a more knowledgeable other. It's interesting that he said other and not P, more knowledgeable person, right? Especially in time in which he lived. But MKO would support Dr. Ashrak's position on using AI, because AI could be the more knowledgeable other in the case of a student learning how to write, academic writing, right? So Dr. Ashrak could say, hold on, she could said, if we rewinded 2 hours ago, she go, and she said, Dr. Ray, I disagree, because Vygotsky said that learners need a more knowledgeable other, and AI can serve as that more knowledgeable other. Then I would have go, oh, you got me, right? You got me from a social constructivist standpoint, right? Still disagree, but you got me. That's the conversation we should be having as educators. This based on what we call the literature. All right. Now, Vygotsky says in order for young people to learn, they have to have a more knowledgeable other. That more knowledgeable other does not need to be a teacher. Okay, it could be someone else in the class, another student. In fact, what we know is learners are more likely to learn from other learners their age, in that age group. This is why we promote things like project-based learning, problem-based learning. When I was coming up as a new teacher, we called it cooperative learning. All right, cooperative learning, group work. That was a big thing when I was a teacher. When I was a new teacher, group work. You always had to have group work, right? That was group work is a social constructivist activity that says what? I put the students in a group, and then as the teacher, I back off. I go from being teacher or even educator to being what? Facilitator. I facilitate the groups. I give them assignments. I facilitate. I watch. I don't get into their business. And I let the group dynamics do what? Manage the product that comes out of the group, right? I might even assign a group leader, a recorder, a timer. But if I'm really doing it well, I kind of let them kind of figure that out themselves. I say, all right, you guys need a group leader. You guys need a presenter. You guys need a timer, right? You need a recorder. You decide who's going to do what, right? And here's the assignment. All right. So we call that cooperative learning, not quite project-based learning and problem-based learning. I know I've mentioned those several times yesterday. I'm going to explain what they are later. But so hopefully in that group, there's a more knowledgeable other. Now you could do it. There's no more knowledgeable something. And then you got total disaster. Right? Because there has to be one or two people in that group that knows a little bit more than everybody else and can guide them, right? If that doesn't happen, that's why cooperative learning fails a lot of the time, because teachers try it and they go, Dr. Wright, the group work was horrible. It was a disaster. It was a disaster, right? Because again, if you see it on LinkedIn, you need to do project-based learning. You need to do cooperative learning, but you don't know the theory behind it. Then you'll just go in your classroom and go, I'm going to do a group work activity. And you put groups together, not knowing what? You need a more knowledgeable other. So there needs to be somebody in the group who's a more knowledgeable other that can lead and advise the group. And it needs to be someone of their age, someone in the group. Or what you could do, if you're working collectively as a school, and let's say you're teaching 5th grade math, right? You go up and you ask that 6th or 7th or 8th grade math teacher, hey, can I get like 5 of your really smart students for like 30 minutes, right? And you have 5 groups, and you put 5 of those really smart 8th graders in the group with the 6th graders, right? Because then the 6th graders go, wow, the 8th graders, wow. Because let me tell you something, they admire the eighth graders more than they admire you. Let me say that again. They admire the eighth graders more than they admire you. When I was coming up, we used to have school safeties. I never got picked to be a school safety, maybe because I was always in trouble. But the school safety would wear this little orange belt, right? And they would walk around and they would be in the hallway. And it was students, managing other students. All right, don't walk, don't run. And guess what? The school safety program was highly successful. I don't know why they stopped it. It was highly successful. Students managing other students. This is a social constructivist act program. I graduated from the Virginia Military Institute. Okay, it's a military school, military college, the best military college in the world. I'm saying that because I graduated from there. And what we did was in barracks, the freshmen lived on the fourth floor, sophomores lived on the third floor, juniors lived on the second floor, seniors lived on the first floor. The seniors were in charge of student life. They were the bosses. And then it went up, right? Freshmen had no power. In fact, the freshman had one senior, he would clean his room, right? Mentorship. That's a social constructivist program. It works. Works. Right? This is the more knowledgeable other. Why did it work? Why can a senior manage the whole the rest of the student body population? Because he's been there for 4 years. He's experienced it for 4 years. He can mentor, he can guide. And guess what? Every last one of those freshmen want to be what? They want to be a senior. Right? They may not want to be the president of the university. They may not want to be the professor. They might not want to be a dean. But every last one of those freshmen want to be a senior. Guarantee you that. Or they wouldn't be there. Unless their motivation was different. We'll talk about motivation later. Okay? So the more knowledgeable person, that's number one. Number two, Vygotsky also had a theory, which we almost see it as a law now, something called the zone of proximum development, the ZPD. And in the zone of proximum development is you got this question of, I want to keep my students interested. I don't want them to be bored in class. I want to keep them. So what you're really asking is, Dr. Ray, how do I get my students in the zone within the zone of proximum development? Within what we call the sweet spot of proximum development. So anytime, if you really want to be the learner teacher or the learner educator or the educator, and you're having a professional development and somebody's standing in front of you and they're going, my name is Dr. such and such, and I'm from such and such, and I wrote this book, and I say, I got a question. I'm having a problem in my third grade class, keeping my students within the sweet spot of the zone of proximum development. Can you help me with that? And watch them go, huh? But they may know, if they like me, they would be like, yeah, let's talk. But most of the people who claim they're an education expert is not going to know what the hell you're talking about. And every educator should know this, all right? Whether you're social constructivist or not. The zone of proximum development is what happens when you have the MKO, the more knowledgeable person, working together with a learner. And the workload, so when you give students work, there's something that's called cognitive load, right? How much cognitive load are you giving them, right? Is the cognitive load overwhelming? Now, this is going to matter when we talk about SMART objectives. Is the cognitive load overwhelming? Then you're outside of ZPD on the high end. Okay, it's too much. It's not in there within their level. It's not within their reach. It's not within their ability. That's then what do you think happens? You what? You make that effective filter bigger or smaller? You make it bigger, right? Because you're outside the ZPD. If you're inside the ZPD, if you're in the sweet spot, you make the effective filter what? Smaller. See how all is connected now? Now they feel like, okay, and then with the more knowledgeable person, they really rocking, right? Now, the other end is too easy. No rigor. No rigor would be the low end of the ZPD. That's when the student or the learner, whatever it is, student or the learner, doesn't matter, they don't need an MKO. Right? Because, and it's just too easy. This is easy. I did this last year. This is easy. Right? That means there's no advancement. I'm not eating the elephant. I'm not eating. Remember, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, scaffolding. I'm not eating the elephant. So that's the low end of the ZPD, and that's where a lot of your problems happen. Teacher, can I go to the bathroom? Teacher, I need to go and call my mother real quick, because this is too easy. When it's too hard, that's fight, right? Teacher, I go to excuse me, that's flight, right? Or you might get that's flight, right? When it's too easy, I'm already finished. Can I go to the bathroom? Can I do something else? I need to see the principal. I need to talk to my mother, right? That's flight. Typically, that's what happens on the low end of the ZPD. On the high end of ZPD is the fight or freeze. Well, no, I ain't doing this. No, I ain't got no pen. I don't like that. Why I gotta learn this anyway? It's all stupid stuff. Hey. Your mother, your father. That's fighting. That's fighting. All right? We call that fighting. That's the amygdala fighting. All right? Or it's this. When it's too rigorous. That's freeze. Okay? Because it's too rigorous, even with the MKO. Even with the MKO. Okay? So as teachers, we have to find that sweet spot. That again, and I don't work for the learner profile, by the way. It seems like I work for a learner profile. But that's another reason why you have to do the learner profile. That's another reason why we do formative assessments. Formative assessments, I said this yesterday, I'll say it again today because it's important. Formative assessments are for you as the educator to inform you, that's why it's called formative, on what you need to do next to keep the student within the sweet spot. That's why I would highly advise schools. I always highly advise them not to add formative assessments as a part of the student's grade. And if you're going to add as a part of student grade, add it as a participation, not as like a quiz grade or something like that, not as an assessment grade. All right. Okay. Because the formative assessment is not to penalize or even reward learners. It's to give you information about what you need to do next. All right. Because if you give a quiz, listen to me. This is where the money is right now. This is what you paid your 100 reals for. If you give a quiz, all right, and the majority of the students failed the quiz, what are you supposed to do? Anyone?
Actually, from my experience, doctor, I think the problem with the teacher, not with the student.
Yeah.
So,
So, what
yeah.
are you supposed to do if a majority of students fail the quiz?
So
They
we
might not be.
yeah, we had it the same, and
Mhm.
we asked the doctor or the teacher to follow the rubrics that we have for her quiz, but she disagree, and then we exclude her. We bring another doctor. She conducted this quiz based on the rubrics that we have and the BLOs, the outcomes for the curriculum, and the students, they had no even questions during conducting the quiz, and they did well.
So here's a couple of things here that I heard from you. Maybe the original professor was correct. Maybe she was being an educator and noticing that the students needed a little bit more outside of what was in the rubric.
Mm.
Now, follow me. If it's because you guys have, it has to be parity between everyone's taking the same exam, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so follow me now. Midterms, final exams are summative assessments. They're not formative. They can come from the university because everyone has to, but you got to keep in mind, formative assessments are not to measure, is not to uh, penalize or reward students. It's only to tell the teacher or the instructor or the educator that something is wrong, either with their practice, either with student motivation, but something is wrong. So what the instructor is supposed to do is reteach. And as Mom said, possibly find a different way to reteach. Now, it seems the problem in your case is that maybe the instructor was going outside of what was in the course book, in the block book,
Yes.
right? The syllabus,
Yes.
right? I would argue, this is the way you guys run your school, but I would argue that, so those quizzes are graded towards the student's grade, correct?
Yes.
I would argue that that's something that your college council hopefully would rethink in the future, to take a formative assessments and use formative assessments for their very purpose. The formative assessment should be, it could be shared with the coordinator, can be shared with the dean, but it should be more of a evaluative tool where the teacher or the instructor could say, I'm doing something incorrectly, or there's some type of issue going on with this group. It's probably a combination of me and the students, not just me and not just the students. It's probably a combination. I got to figure out what that is. Is it a personality issue? Is it a miscommunication issue? Am I going too far off topic? Because she may be going too far off topic, right? Am I not focusing on the core things? And yes, that formative assessments should be aligned with the summative assessment. I do agree with that. I guess my pause is not automatically saying that there's something wrong with the instructor. I'm not saying that the instructor is 100% right. What I'm saying is I don't want you to take on the position that the instructor, because the instructor may be doing something positive and should be rewarded for that, but also she also has to understand that these grades are going for the larger, for the against other students, they're being ranked order, which is again problematic in itself, right?
Yes.
But the formative assessments should only be for the teacher and maybe the coordinator to say, share your grades from the assessment and let's talk. What can we do now to change, to change the way you're teaching and what you're doing, and we need to reteach that concept again. This is the problem with pacing. This is the problem with having and I want everyone to hear me out. This is the problem with saying in week 1 we're going to do this, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, 8. That's the disadvantage of doing that, because when you do that, you leave a little opportunity for reteaching. It would be best if in a university level, but listen to, because I think this happens in K-12 too also. It's best if the teacher is given the standards. In the university case, it comes from the block book. The teacher are given those standards and said, I got to cover these 20 things in 16 weeks. Okay? But not even 16 weeks. I got 13 weeks to cover them. Not even 13 because you got holidays, right? So I got really 10 weeks to cover these 20 things, right? And this is going to be my strategy. And then the coordinator say, within your strategy, you need to allow for time for reteaching. Listen to me now. Time for reteaching, where you give them a quiz, and if they don't do well on the quiz, you now have time to reteach. That is a much better strategy, because now you're giving time for reteach. Because it's the same thing with me in my university. Okay. The problem is if the student failed the quiz, the student failed the quiz. And that grade is recorded. And what happens is he doesn't really learn because we're moving on to the next thing now. So when he goes to take the final exam or the midterm, well, he's going to get it wrong again. And even if he gets it right by virtue of getting it wrong, did he really learn the concept? He learned the answer to the question. See, this is how we create students instead of learners. Because so a student says, I'm going to do just enough to pass the exam. I'm going to do just enough, right? And they don't learn anything, right? Again, it's a battle, right? It's a battle because, yeah, I can give you good numbers. X amount of, we're going to go strictly off the block book. X amount of students. Mashallah, 98% of the student body passed the midterm. Mashallah. But then when they go to the next English class or whatever class, then that professor's complaining they didn't learn anything from the previous course. But you go, well, hold on a second. They all got A pluses. But hold on a second. How did they get A pluses and they didn't learn any? I can't teach them this. I now have to teach them what should have been taught in the first semester in that one course, which is the prerequisite course to this course, because they didn't learn it. And now it's creating a problem for me because I have my 10 weeks I got my block book to follow. You see how it creates the problem?
Yes,
right? So then we have a whole bunch of, then what happens is we have a whole bunch of people coming out with bachelor's degrees. We have a whole bunch of people coming out with master's degrees. We have a whole bunch of people coming out with PhDs. And this is not just in Saudi Arabia. This is worldwide. They're coming out with degrees and not knowing anything. Why? Because it's about throwing content at them. And the smart student knows, this is what I need to know. I'm going to learn it just enough for this quiz, for this midterm, for this final. I'm going to brain dump it. Right? And there's no active, what we call, there's no cohesion between course to course. All right? So the ZPD, the zone of proximity, what you're really asking me when you're asking about keeping your students on task and interested, you're really asking a question about the zone of proximal development. What we need as educators, what we try to do is find that sweet spot where they need a little help, they need a more knowledgeable person or other, whether it's a teacher, another student, AI, whatever it may be, the textbook, right? Whatever it may be, to help them navigate with one level of difficulty, not 5 level, not 2 level, because that might take them outside the zone of proximal development. You can't do that unless you do what? Learner profile. You can't do that unless you have qualitative data and quantitative data on who your students are, what their wants, needs, and expectations are. And you must do it continuously. Hopefully, all of this is bridging together now for you. Okay? Now, we talked about the ZPD. Let's talk about planning, because now we could talk about planning. Okay? As now, for university instructors, the plan is already set for them. They get a block book and they follow the block. It's a lot more difficult for teachers, because teachers, you get second graders, you get first graders, you get KG 1s, 2, 3s, right? And you're like, what do they need to know, right? Well, now we know where to find what they need to know. That comes from what? That comes from what?
Learning profile.
No, that doesn't come from the learner profiles. It kind of comes from the learner profile, but the learner profile is part of the curriculum. But what is the what? What I said yesterday, the what is?
The
Where do
standard?
we get the standards? The standards are the what? Okay, so we get those standards from the government. We can get it from the textbook. Like you got an American textbook. An American textbook is going to use the Common Core standards. So everything in that textbook is going to be based on the Common Core standards for math or whatever that textbook subject is, right? If you got a Cambridge book, that's British, right? It's going to be based on their British standards, right? And a lot of times, like I said, really good books or even halfway decent books, they will have the standards listed somewhere in the textbook, right? They'll say these are the standards that align with Unit 1, Unit 2, Chapter 3, whatever the case may be. You just got to look for them, all right? If it's not there, sometimes schools buy bad books. You can go, okay, if this is a Saudi program, I'm going to Saudi website. If it's an American program, I'm going to the Common Core. I can go into British. If it's Australian, go to Australia. The standards are going to be there for every grade. Trust me, okay? That's your what, all right? Then you, as we said yesterday, you determine out of all those standards, which ones that you are most likely able to do based on what? The learner profile. Because remember, the first couple of weeks of school, we're not doing any teaching. We're trying to build our learner profile with quantitative data and qualitative data. So I look at those standards and say, there's no way based on his current capability is he able to do that. Now I'm able to call the parent, or I'm able to talk to the academic director, or I'm able to talk to the coordinator and say, look, these 3 students, they're at a high level. They can do more than what the standards offer. These 7 students, they're going to need additional help to get them there because they're just not there capability wise, right? There's a lot of conversations that we can have. You could then inform the person who's admitting the students and saying, hey, look, this is the type of diagnostic you need to give them so you can have a better idea of what grade they truly need to be in, right? And then when the parent says, no, my baby's he is this amount of years old and he's going to be in this grade. And you can say, ma'am, I understand that you want him in this grade to be with his peers, but the reality is he doesn't have the capability right now. He's not at that level right now. These are the things that you can do to get him to that level. These are the subject matter. Maybe you get a teacher, maybe you do some whatever. But right now, if I put him in this class, right, he's not going to be able to thrive. The same thing we do with ESO, right? The same thing we do in a language proficiency. We don't put an A2 in a master's course, right, where it's all in English. Why? Because there's no way in the world an A2 can possibly understand master level instruction in English. It's not going to happen. So we don't even allow that A2. We say what? You have to at least be a what? A C1 at least, or a high B2 at least, right? And where am I getting these C1s and B2s from yesterday? The CEFR. All right, the CEFR. All right, that's the standards in most places for English level recognition. Okay, so now you got your standards. Now you know what standards your students are able to, you believe your students are able to accomplish. Now you're going to start writing unit plans. Okay, unit plans. All right. I would say you'll write a yearly plan. Okay. You're going to write a yearly plan first. The yearly plan is a smaller plan because you're going to have them for 180 days, right? About 6 months, right? So now that you know what the standards are, you know the destination. Raise your hand if you go on a trip without planning. Anybody go on a trip without planning? I mean, I know rich people do that. You just say, I'm going to go to Maldives. And you don't plan. You just get on a plane, right? And you go to Maldives, or you're going to have problems what? First of all, you're going to have a problem getting to the island because you didn't book the boat to get to the island. Then you're going to have problems with the hotel. You're going to have a lot of problems when you get there, right? And you're going to pay a lot of money for the flight because you booked the flight last minute, right? But if we plan on vacation, if say, you know what? I'm going to go on vacation and I'm going to go in August. Let me check the flights now. I'm going to get the cheaper flight, right? Because I'm booking in advance. Then I get the rental car. I'm going to get that cheap, right? If I book last minute, there might not be any cars available. There might not be any hotels available. There might not be any seats on the flight available, right? And then, but I got all the money in the world, right? I don't care. I'll pay expensive ticket. I pay for an expensive hotel, right? Then I have another issue. I'm there at the hotel. What is it to do? I guess I'll go walking around. All right. You don't know what's going on in the place. You don't know if there's an event. You don't know if there's a concert. You don't know where all the party spots are, where people hang out, where the museums are, where the movie theater, you don't know. So now you're spending your time trying to figure out where to go, how to get there, where to buy tickets. It becomes a horrible experience versus planning your trip out. Okay, we're going to go on this date. We're going to be at this hotel. We're going to get a rental car. This is how we're going to get there. We're going to go to this amusement park. And on the next day, and this day, we're just going to hang out by the pool, drink some Coca-Cola, right? Some of y'all are putting something in your Coca-Colas, but we won't talk about that. Anyway, but you're going to enjoy yourself, right? Because you kind of planned it out. It doesn't have to be now, hear me out for a second. You don't go on day one at 2:00, we're going to do this. And at 7:00, we're going to do this. And you don't do that because then what? You're on vacation. You don't want to be on a strict schedule, right? You don't want to say, okay, guys, at 3:00, we got to be here. Let's go, 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 go. You only have 32 minutes of enjoyment in the pool. After the 32 minutes, you got 7 minutes to get in the shower, change your clothes, and you need to be in the car in 10 minutes. You don't want to do that because that's not enjoyable either, right? So when you do an academic plan, you know what the destination is. You know that you gotta get these 11, 10, 17, whatever number of things this is, competencies accomplished, right? And that's all you basically say. I'm going to do this first, and you try to do it in a logical order for the school year. And I'm going to break them down into units. This is going to be a unit about this, unit about this, unit about this, and unit about this. And within those units, I'm going to cover these concepts, just like a textbook does it. Okay? That's your yearly plan. And then now you need to come up with a unit plan. Now, unit plans, you could do one unit at a time. I don't advise doing all your unit plans at one time. Why? Because something might have happened in the unit that you're working on, and you need to reinforce it again in the next unit. So be kind of lax on your unit plans. But the unit plan look at the unit plan as the architecture of what you're going to teach. The main thing about unit plans is, remember you talked about interest and keeping the students within that sweet spot of the ZPD? You're going to do that via, listen to me now, because this is why you paid your money. You're going to do that via the unit plan. Because the unit plan is going to be representative of the learner profile. And I would highly advise not to use the themes that are in the textbook, because those themes might not be connected at all with your learners. I remember I used to teach at KSU for a year, 2 years, I think. And there, back then, the Saudi was still closed. We had the Matawa area. It was still very closed, right? And I don't know how this got through, but they had a unit, and in front of the unit was Green Day. You know Green Day? The band Green Day with the guitars. And this was in 2011 in Saudi Arabia. And this was a unit that was in the syllabus. But this is haram. This is haram, right? This is haram. Can I use that as a theme for my unit? No, right? So the learner profile will tell you what your themes are for the unit. The unit is what's going to keep your students motivated, because you're going to customize the units to basically the things you saw in the learner profile. Their favorite colors, their favorite movies, their favorite foods. You're going to customize the units. All right? And you're going to keep themes. Now, it is perfect. It is perfect when you can get every teacher, when you can group teach. So in the instances where they got a teacher for math, they have a teacher for English, they have a teacher for social studies, right? If all guys get together and say, all right, let's look at our learner profiles. What can we make the unit so we all have the same unit? This is called learning across the curriculum, or cross-curricular education. This is called cross-curricular education. So you take the math teacher, you take the English teacher, you take the social studies teacher, you take the science teacher, you take the PE teacher. You guys team teach, okay? Because you're team teaching. So you team plan. And you guys have a planning period. Now, mind you, if your school's not set up like this, you're not going to be able to do it. But to be an agent of change, you can recommend this for the next year. Well, why don't we do cross-curricular education, and we set aside a time every day, it doesn't have to be every day, by the way. It could be 2 times a week, where all the teams get together and they plan the next unit, or they plan the lesson plans, the next unit and the lesson plans for the week, right? So you all guys saying, all right, unit 1 is going to be why the world is round. That's the unit. Now, what is this? This is called context. This is called context. Now, what is context? Context is the key to teaching and learning. Everything in life is based on context. Everything. Life is based on context. Life is based on context. Now, if somebody was walking by, right now, they would think what? Life is based. They would think I'm angry, right? They would think that I'm arguing because my voice is raised, my hands are animated, right? They would think I'm angry. I'm a black guy. Yeah, black men are always angry, right? They would think that I'm angry. Why? Because they don't know what? They don't know the context. They don't know the context, right? Context is everything, right? Context is everything. So you always teach in context. Always teach in context. Units allow you to create the context, and you stay within the context. Why the world is round. So in English class, what are we going to read about? A story about something that is round. Circles. Right? In math class, what are we learning this week in that unit? circumference, radius, diameter. Huh? In science class, what do we learn about? Planets, the solar system. These things are around, right? Maybe molecules, maybe some molecules are round, right? Things are around in science. In PE, we are learning how to catch a ball. Learn how to kick a ball. Ball's around, right? In social studies, we're learning about why people sit in circles and the power of sitting in a circle in social studies class. Or, what's going on, in moments in history where the circle was important, right? Social studies could also be the equator. Countries that are on the equator, because the equator is what? Round. Huh? So now, as long as they meet the standards for social studies, the standards for English, things that are around, right? Now here's the benefit. Now you got a common theme all day that the students are dealing with the round thing through English, through math, through social studies. And here's the beautiful thing. The hardest thing is differentiation and personalization. It's the hardest thing to do is to differentiate instruction. Very difficult, especially when you got 20 kids in your class, 15 kids. It's hard. Even if you have 5 kids in your class, it's hard to differentiate instruction, right? Now, this is a kind of a cheat code for differentiation, because you can mention a concept in English class and the student didn't get it with you, but the student loves math, and because you guys are teaching on the same context, the math teacher says something that supports what you said in English class, and the student goes, "Oh, that's what Dr. Ray was talking about." You see? Oh, that's what he meant by that. Oh, now I get it. Now I get it. And he's motivated to come to you. Oh, I know what you mean now. Yesterday when you said this, because Mr. Such and such said that, and now I get it. Oh, I'm with you now. Okay, go ahead on. I got you now. Right? Because they're hearing the same, even though it's different subjects, they're hearing the same context over and over and over again. And what you're doing is you're helping them move up Bloom's taxonomy. And we're talking about Bloom's later. All right. That's the value of the unit plan. Always have a unit plan and set all the standards that is appropriate for that unit into that plan so you can hit those units, those concepts, all right? Those standards, all right? And you got to plan this out. It has to be planned. You got to put it on paper. You got to put it on the WhatsApp. It can't just be here, okay? Then you have your daily lesson plans. Now, there are a lot of people I hear on social media saying, you don't need to write a daily lesson plan. They are on crack. They are smoking some good drugs. Okay. Every educator, university is different. I'm not talking andragogy. I'm not talking K to 12. Every K to 12 teacher needs to have a daily lesson plan. Not a weekly plan, a daily lesson plan that has objectives, that has smart objectives. Okay. Daily lesson plans. What the daily lesson plans are, a daily lesson plan is a detailed script of everything you're going to do so the students meet those objectives. It's detailed. And you're going to start from wherever they are. Okay? And you're going to know where they are based on what? Your learner profile. Because you're always updating your learner profile so you know where they are. Because you don't always have to start at 0. They might be at 2. But you won't know unless you are learner profiling. Okay? So your daily lesson plan is where the magic happens, because these are the interactions that you're having with learners. Now, in that unit, you're going to have, let's say the unit is 3 weeks. And in that 3 weeks, you got what? 15 lessons, right? 5 days a week, you got 15 lessons, right? So now you're going to write lessons that's going to get the students to the standards that they have to meet. And you're going to do it in a crawl, walk, run phase, or crawl or run or run. It depends on where they are. Some students may be in a crawl phase, and you have to know that based on the learner, based on the learner profile. Some may be at the walk phase. Some may be at the, why? Because all their ZPDs, all their sweet spots are going to be different. So then you could decide what knowledgeable other that they need. Do they need AI? Do they need another student from the upper grade? Do they need Google? Do they need me to sit down with them? Right? You have to decide that, all right? Where they fall in the crawl, walk, or run stage. All right. You have to decide, there you go, Mohammed, what support they need. Because that support can be different based on the situation. Maybe they need their laptop. Maybe they need their phone. All right. That more knowledgeable other can be different. Now, let me say something about the more knowledgeable other for a second as a sidebar. If you consistently use the same, hear me out. Hear me out. If you consistently use the same more knowledgeable other, then it becomes a crutch. This is what I was saying to Dr. Ashrak about the AI. Because remember, I said earlier, she could say, well, if AI could help them fall within their ZPD, the sweet, or serve as a more knowledgeable knowledge, then I can come back and say, hold on a second. The problem is I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem if they consistently use it, because it becomes a crutch. Because Vygotsky says that if you continuously use the same MKO, right, it becomes a crutch, and now it's not effective. So you got to vary the MKO. Because if you continuously use the same one, if you say all the time AI, then they become dependent on it. Keep that in mind. See, this stuff is hard. But Ray, you just said the MKO. Now you tell me not the MKO. Yes. Yes. Complexity. We're going to talk about complexity theory. It's complex. All right. It's not complicated. It's complex. Okay. The daily lesson plan. What else about the daily lesson plan? Let's talk now. We're in the module 3 now. When we write the daily lesson plan, you have to know Bloom's taxonomy. Now, let me do a learner profile. How many people know about Bloom's taxonomy? Does anybody not know about Bloom's taxonomy? You don't know. Raise your hand if you don't know. You can use the react button. Okay. All right. It is essential that every teacher, educator, I don't care what you call yourself, you have to know Bloom's. It's not a hard concept to know. I'm going to show you something. Give me 1 second. I got to pull something up for you. All right. Bloom's taxonomy is what you're going to use. Let me say this. Not only teachers use this, but businesses use this. When they come up with their professional development or their training modules, right? Businesses use Bloom's. They hire people like me, instructional designers, and we instructional designers, we use Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's is created by a guy named Dr. Orlando Bloom. Okay. I keep on saying Orlando Bloom. I'm something wrong with me. I think I'm wrong. Weird. I'm a weirdo. A guy named Ibrahim Blooms. His name is Eben, not Orlando. Orlando Bloom is a daggone actor. His name was Ibrahim Blooms or Abraham Blooms. And he created this. And businesses all around the world, Tesla, Amazon, when they do a training for their employees, they use this model. Okay. And teachers use it also. We use this to create our learning objectives. All right, this is an example of Bloom's. Can everyone see my screen? All right. Now, sometimes it's seen as a pyramid, right? This one's using a light bulb. Now, it is important to know this. There's two Bloom's models. There's the old model, which this is. Well, this is a combination of the old model and a new model, by the way. And then there's a revised. Dr. Bloom's students actually revised the taxonomy, and they did a couple of things, and I'll tell you what it is, and I'll tell you why it's bad. Okay. I use this model. Now, in Dr. Bloom's original model, you see how these are all verbs? He had nouns here. All right. And he kept, these are nouns. In the new model, these are verbs. So this is in the new model, instead of knowledge, this is knowing. Instead of comprehension, this is comprehending in the new model. In the new model, this is applying. Follow me. In the new model, this is analysis and analyzing. In the new model, this is synthesizing or creating. In the new model, this is evaluating. Now, in the new model, there's another major change. There's a major change. In the new model, creating, synthesis means to create something from something else. Okay? To create, take components of something to create something new. Okay? In the new model, synthesis or creating is a higher order thinking skill than evaluation. So you will see creating, if you Google it right now, probably you're going to see creating above of evaluating or evaluation. That's the new model. Now, because I'm an educator, all right, and I have my philosophy, I believe that evaluating or evaluation is a higher ordered skill than synthesis. The reason why I believe that is because the business world, the business people still use the old model. They use the verbs right here, but they use the old hierarchy. Now I'm going to trust Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, right? I'm going to trust those guys because they know how to get things done, right? Versus us educators, we shady. We are shady, right? So if Jeff Bezos and Tesla and Warren Buffett says the old model that evaluating is a higher order skill than synthesis, I believe it. Now, not only from that, I believe it. Why? Because when you create something, we're always looking to do what? Make it better. Right? When you create something, you can always make it better. Right? You create a product, you can always make it better. The ability to make it better is evaluating. Or even if you didn't create it, you can go to somebody else's product and show them how they could make their product better through evaluation. Okay, so you can become a consultant, an advisor, because you're teaching them. You can now show other people how to evaluate, right? And so evaluation is a program of what we talked about yesterday and lifelong learning. Remember that? Becoming a lifelong learner. Too often, there's a show called Shark Tank. I think in the UK it's called Dragon's Lair or Dragon's Den, something like this. And in this show, it's a reality show. People who have business ideas, they have created products. and there's a panel of wealthy business people, billionaires, multimillionaires, right? And they look at the person's business plan or product and they decide whether they want to invest in it or they decline them, right? And so in order to be on that stage, you have to be an evaluator, because they are not only evaluating, but they're putting their own money. If they really like the business plan or the product, and if you watch that show, what you will find is, even if the person has an excellent product and the panel, I forgot what they call it, the evaluators, the sharks, they call it shark in the Shark Tank, the sharks in the UK, I think they call it dragons. A lot of times, because they're so smart in business, they will notice that the inventor of the product or the business founder, he may have an excellent product, an excellent business plan, but they decline to work with that person. Why? Can anybody tell me why?
Maybe because they're not excellent inventors.
No, they could be excellent inventors, wonderful inventors. But the sharks or the dragons decide, I do not want to invest in your business. You have a great product. Go off on your own. Why? Why? Because they notice that that person only has an inventor mindset. They have a synthesis mindset, but they don't have an evaluation mindset. They don't have the ability to look at their product, to look at their business and say, how can I make it better? They look at their product and they go, this is perfect, right? Like you look at your baby, my baby is perfect. And then when the teacher calls you and says, look, we need to talk about your child. They are not doing well in this class. And the parent goes, what? Not my baby. My baby is perfect. Well, we know what? That ends up hurting the child, doesn't it? Because his mama and his daddy is always saying, no, my son, it's you, the teacher. You're not doing something right. It's you, right? And they go from grade to grade, blaming the teacher, blaming the school. They go from school to school. They go from situation to situation, blaming because their baby's perfect, right? It's the same thing with this. So that's why evaluation is a higher ordered skill than synthesis. Now, again, when you see the revised Bloom, I think it was revised in 2001, you will see synthesis over evaluation or creating over evaluation. All right. Now, how do I use this in my lesson planning? Well, once you figure out where your students are, right? They might not be. Knowledge is a lower ordered skill. That means they know very little to nothing about what you're about to teach them. You have to assess that through the learner profile. All right. What did I say yesterday we can do to figure out what they already know? We can give them what? What did I say yesterday? We can give them a pretest. We can give them a pretest. We can give them a pretest to determine what they already know about the subject. This will allow us to know where they fall, where a majority of the students fall. Do they fall in the knowledge, comprehension, applying, right? And then I can make a better idea of what my lesson plan may be. Or I can edit my lesson plan or write a new lesson plan. Okay? Knowledge means that they don't know a lot about the topic. So when you write your objectives can use words like students will be able to arrange, define, describe, duplicate, identify, label, list, match, memorize, name, order, outline, recognize, relate, recall, repeat, reproduce, select, state. I like to use underline, circle, right? These all fall under identification, right? These allow you to write smart objectives because Follow me now. Listen to me now. This is where the money is. Your daily lesson plan are the acts that you do to get them to know the standard, to learn, to acquire some knowledge. Okay, these are the daily acts that you're going to walk, that you're going to model. You're going to model these things, and then you're going to ask them to practice these things. So you're going to model it and practice it. So teachers, what we do as teachers, we set context. Okay, we set context. All right, we model the act that we want. We model it, and then we practice it with the learners. That's what we do. That's part of the teacher's paradigm. We set context, we model it, and then we practice. We set context, we model, we practice. That's the first 3 steps. We do other things, but I want to get into the first 3 steps. These are essential. We set the context, we model, and then we practice. Okay? So these are, remember yesterday or today, I told you, you're going to tell the students what they're going to learn. Now, remember, I gave you the objectives for today. You notice that they all begin with words like these, verbs. Okay. As the lesson, as you go out the unit, you should be moving the students up the taxonomy. You following me? You shouldn't be stuck here. So on week 1, day 5, which will be Friday, right? Hopefully you're still not in the knowledge phase. Hopefully you moved up to comprehending, or maybe even applying. All right, maybe let's say you're at comprehension on Friday. All right, week 2, day 8, right? That would be week 2, day 8, which will be what day? Wednesday, the following Wednesday, if there was no breaks or holidays, right? Week 2, day 8, Wednesday, you may be in the applying phase. All right. Week 2, day 10, you may be in the analysis phase. All right. Week 3, day 14, which would be what? Thursday, the third Thursday. Hopefully you're in the evaluation stage. Now, listen to me. Depending on the capability of your students, you might not be able to get all the way up here. Don't worry about it. The key is to try to move them as high up the taxonomy as possible. If you can get them to applying, perfect. Right? If you can only get them to comprehending, okay. That's just their ability. You know their abilities because what? You're learner profiling. Right? If you can get them to applying, and this is a goal that you're setting for yourself. All right, in this unit, I want to try to get them to the analysis stage. Right? In this unit, man, okay, we've been to 4 units now. I wonder if I can get them to do the synthesis stage. Don't feel like you're a failure if you can't always get them to the evaluation stage. All right? Don't feel that way. Now, if you're team teaching, if you're learning, if you're using cross-curricular learning and the math teachers using the same context in the same unit and the English, you're more likely to get them up the taxonomy. That makes sense? Because they're hearing the same things. Now, if you're not using cross-curricular learning and the math teacher is doing her thing and the science teacher doing her thing and the PE teacher is doing her thing and the English teacher doing her thing, then the learning is compartmentalized and they're not getting the same inputs. Remember, what did we say about universal grammar theory? They must get what? Inputs. If you don't use it, you what? You lose it. Right? So they got to get the inputs. So if they only getting the inputs for 50 minutes in your class and you're the first class of the day, by the end of the day, they may have lost it. Huh? And that's no fault of your own. And that's why you have to be well versed enough in teaching and learning where you go to the academic director, What did I say yesterday about Camara Devello? The possibilities, right? Particularity. I'll give somebody 100 real. I'll give you your money back right now. Right now. And somebody, let me take this down for a second. Y'all messing with me. Y'all messing with me. Let me take this down. How do I stop this? Let me look, y'all. I'm gonna give you your money back right now. Right now, I'm gonna give you your 100 reals back. If somebody, it only could be one person, tell me the 3 P's from yesterday. Now, hurry up. Gotta go right now. Go. 5.
Practicality, possibility,
Practicality, possibility.
particularity.
All right, you get who's that?
Irene.
Who's that? Is that Irene?
Yes.
All right, you got your 100 reals back. I'll transfer it back.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. Now, possibility. That's when you go, the possibility is about being brave. And you go back to that academic director and you say, God damn it, we gotta goddamn use cross-curricular learning in this building. What is this? And you sit down and you explain to the principal, they don't remember anything because they only getting the input for 50 minutes and then they go and they take my class at 8. And then when 1 o'clock, they forgot it because the other teachers are shouting about what they're shouting about. And then also it's creating what? A higher cognitive load on them. That's a tougher cognitive load to hear 5 different things in from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to 1. They're hearing 5 different things and everybody's saying it's important. Every teacher saying, this is important, this is important, this is important, this is important. That's cognitive load. You're stressing them out. What do you think you're doing? You're making that what? That filter bigger. And not you, the school is. Because you didn't do it. You're doing all the things to make the filter smaller. But the way the school works is countering you and making that effective filter. Things like this are part of curriculum. The philosophy, the programming of the school, when they eat lunch, all of this is curriculum. The time they need to go, the time they need to be there, when they go to sleep. Schools should be sending messages out to parents. It's 6:45 p.m. It's time to get the kids ready to sleep. When I was managing Hay schools for a year. And I would do Dr. Ray's, read with Dr. Ray at 6:30 every night. Why? Because I'm going to read you a story, and now it's time for you to go to bed. After story time, it's time to brush your teeth and time to go to sleep. Time you brush your teeth and time to go to sleep. Why? Because I need you back in the building at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, well rested. So, because you're one of my students, I'm instituting Dr. Ray's learning time to promote you going to bed early because I know that's a part of how you're going to be able to acquire knowledge. So that has to be a part of my school program. Follow what I'm saying? School is not from 7 in the morning to 1 or whatever time you guys get out. Learning takes place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until the day you die. All right? That is Bloom's taxonomy. All right, now, let's talk about something else now. I only got a couple more minutes. I got 15 minutes. Now we're going to talk about smarts. You're going to take Bloom's, you're going to take this taxonomy, and we're trying to get students up the taxonomy through the unit. Everybody understand that concept, right? Trying to get them through the unit. Trying to get them up the taxonomy throughout the unit. All right. We're not going to stress ourselves out if we don't get all the way to the top. Okay. Now, how do I write an objective? How do I write an objective? Right. First, we got to know that all objectives must be what?
Smart objective.
It must be smart. All right. So let's go through it. Let me see. My son got my thing. Ray. Ray. Hold on a second. Give me 1 second. All objectives must be smart. So you're gonna take Bloom's taxonomy, right? You're gonna take those verbs, and you're gonna write smart objectives. All right. All right. So you're gonna do your unit plan. Your unit plan is way before the unit happens, right? And then you're gonna write your lesson plans. You don't pre-write your lesson plans. Why? Because you write once you get good at writing lesson plans, you can do it in 5 minutes. Once you get good at it and you know your students. Don't stress yourself out. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to have good grammar. It's for you, not anyone else. Technically, if you're absent that day, you can give the substitute the lesson plan for that day. Um, right? But sometimes some schools want to see your lesson plans. If the school wants to see your lesson plan, then yeah, you need to be a little bit more like have good grammar and all that stuff. But ultimately, it's for the teacher. Okay. And if you get good at it and you know what you're doing, you can write them in 5 minutes. Now, I have a lesson plan generator that also takes in consideration the standards. Okay. That I downloaded in the as a resource for you. So you can utilize that. But I would say write them by hand first. But you can utilize that lesson plan generator. All right, smart. S. Does anybody know what the S stands for?
Specific,
Specific. All right.
measurable. Because
So
we use it with the KPIs. Before we do any KPIs, we have to make it
They have to
smart.
be-
That's why, yeah.
so every learning objective has to be smart. Okay. The outcomes don't have to be smart. The standards don't have to be smart, but the learning objectives have to be smart. The S means specific. That means when the objective has to be a specific act. So we go back to Bloom's. Students will be able to underline the subject in the sentence. Students will be able to circle the verb in the sentence. Students will be able to add 2-digit numbers, right? Students will be able to write a simple sentence with one simple subject and one simple verb. Students will be able to identify the Western Hemisphere on a map. Okay. And in PE class, it might be students will be able to kick the ball at least 6 meters. All right. And ESL class, I know we had ESL teacher. Students will be able to respond to the question, what is their favorite foods? What are their favorite vegetables? That's very specific, right? Students will be able not just respond, but students will be able to respond orally, or students will be verbally to what is their favorite vegetable. That's specific. The M is, you've already said it, dot, measurable. All right. Now, that means the teacher can see tangibly that the student did it. Whether it's or see it or hear that the student did it. Whether it is okay, I can't do it like that. Whether it is
Again, if the student said it, wrote it, it's able to be measured. Now, this means that words like no, they're not measurable. So you cannot have students will be able to know how to tie their shoes. That is not a smart objective. Why? Because you cannot measure no. Students will be able to understand the difference between passive and active, the passive and active voice. That is not measurable because you cannot measure understand. Got it? Now you can say students will be able to identify the passive sentence by placing a P or circling the passive sentence or something like that. That is measurable. Okay. So words like know and understand are not measurable. Okay. And it also proves what? That you don't teach anyone anything because you don't know what somebody knows. Okay. A is what?
Achievable. Yes.
Achievable. Right? This means, is this something that the student's actually able to do? Is this within their capability? All right. Can their student physically do it? All right. Can they, you have a student who's in a wheelchair, you can't say they're going to run to 10 meters. Number one, that'd be very insensitive, right? And number two, they can't achieve it. It's not within their capability. You're not going to ask a first grader to do trigonometry or geometry. You're not going to ask a first grader to tell you what an obtuse angle is. All right. Now, there are also first graders that could tell you what an obtuse angle is, but these are very smart first graders, right? The average first grader probably doesn't even know what an angle is, right? So that's not an achievable. That's not something. Now, how do we know that it's achievable? Again, we can look at our standards. Our standards will help us with that. All right. That's what we have standards for. Okay. Okay. So can they do it? Also, it's another reason why you would do the learner profile. Achievable is another reason why you have to be what? That possibility again, you have to be brave and tell the coordinator, tell the academic director, this is not achievable for our learners, right? R is what?
Related.
Realistic or relevant. All right. And what this means is, does the student actually need to know this? Is this going to help them out in life? Is this going to help solve a problem that they have or will have in the future? All right. In 2026, do we need to teach students how to type? Is there a skill that we need to teach now? No. Now, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, I actually took a typing class. Why? Because when I was in middle school, it was still, you would put on your resume how many words per minute you could type. And that was an actual skill. Why? Because there was people were still using typewriters when I was in middle school. Yes, that's how old I am. All right, that old typewriter. Yes, I used one of those. Okay, had to change the ribbon out and everything. All right, so men and women. All right, now here's something that is interesting. My school district wasn't smart enough and forward thinking enough to know what? You know what? Kids raise age back in that day, right? They don't need to know that because by the time they become adults, that's going to be a skill that's going to be dying out. They weren't forward thinking enough in their minds, you know, being able to type 101, 100, I think it was 120 words per minute. You had to be able to type 120 words per minute. That was the standard. And that was a relevant skill for the time. In 2026, that's not a relevant skill, so we would never teach it. So make sure you're not teaching things that are not relevant or realistic. Okay, and then T is what?
Related with time, so it's not be possible to leave it open without timeline.
Can you do everything within the time that you have for that lesson? So if you have a 50-minute lesson, can you accomplish everything in that 50 minutes? All right. So, and when you learn, if you have a 50 minutes lesson, that's not a lot of time, right? So you got to be very decisive and strategic on how you use your 50 minutes, right? So timing. These are smart objectives, right? And if you build smart objectives and you do it in a scalable way, where you're scaffolding the learning, I+1 crashes I+1, right? You're going to have an effective unit because everything's going to mash together well. Because I'm pretty sure you guys have had classes where you did one thing on Monday and then you came in Tuesday and the lesson was not connected at all to what happened on Monday, right? Monday's lesson should be in many ways connected to Tuesday's lesson, or Tuesday's lesson should be connected with Monday's lesson. All right, they all should be connected together. All right. I think I'm on. Am I finished the module? Did I finish? I think I did. All right, I got to cover. And I think I can do this in 3 minutes. All right, I talked to you about Larsa Freeman already. Dr. Larsa Freeman is I think she's the world. I think she's retired now. She's out of University of Michigan. She gave you the quote that I gave you before about students do not learn because we teach, right? Teaching doesn't cause learning. If you pull up Larsa Freeman on YouTube, and you can just look, she's just amazing. She could tell you a lot about teaching and learning. Dr. Diane Larsa Freeman. Another one of her theories, she came up with a theory called complexity theory. And in complexity theory, she's basically saying that the world is chaotic. I mentioned this yesterday. And that you have to understand the world as it is, and that learning is not taught in a straight line. All right. Learning is not a straight line activity. All right. This is not a straight line activity. It's a squiggly line. All right. If you think learning is a straight line activity, you're going to fail. It's a straight line. All right. I mean, this is learning. Most teachers think learning is this. I start here and I go up here. No, learning is this. It's chaotic because the world is chaotic. So in complexity theory, Dr. Larsa Freeman says you need 3 things. You need to teach students how to be adaptable, adaptability. So you have to teach them how to adapt to change. All right. Adapt. Don't always do the same thing over and over again. This supports or use the same method over and over again. All right. This supports what? Vygotsky. Vygotsky said, don't continue to use the same MKO. All right. This also supports Pablo. There's no best method. You got to consistently change up. You can't use the same method over and over again because you're not increasing their capability. You're not going to be able to move them up Bloom's taxonomy to higher order thinking using the same method. So you got to mix your abilities up. You got to have what? Many tools in your toolbox. Huh? Many tools in your toolbox. Larsa Freeman also says you have to be iterative. Anybody know what iteration is or being iterative? Iteration means doing the same things different ways. All right. You have to learn how to do the same things different ways. Why? Because you have different learners in your class and they're not going to be able to see it the first way. They might not get it the first way that you said it, right? They need to be not just lecture, stand up, try it, touch it, feel it, talk about it, if you can get manipulatives. Do you know in English, you could teach using manipulatives? It sticks. This is a verb. This stick is a verb. This shortest stick is a noun. And to help, because some students, their brain works like that, right? They need to touch the noun. They need to touch the verb, and they could form sentences by using little blocks. I have the blocks. I can. I don't have time to show you. I'll show you tomorrow. These are for English class. They look like little Legos. All right, that's iteration, but you don't always use those blocks because again, those blocks become a crutch. All right, so be iterative. The last one is self-referential. She says in complexity theory, you have to be self-referential. You have to, and this goes back again on why Dr. Ashwack, students shouldn't use AI to learn how to write, because they need to be able to look at their product and be and say, okay, how can I change my thinking? Where was I flawed wrong in thinking? If they didn't generate or do the hard work, they're not going to be able to be self-referential. Look at me, Dr. Ashwack. I want you to look at me right in my eye. If they are not self-referential, how can you move them up balloons to evaluation? They can never meet that higher order thinking skill. They can't even get to synthesis, right? Because in order to get to those higher ordered skills like synthesis, synthesizing, and evaluating, they have to be self-referential. Well, if they didn't generate the work themselves, or AI was so much of a crutch, they'll never be self-referential. This is why I say teach them without anything other than teach them manually first, and then once they got it manually, then introduce technology in other forms. I said the same thing to Joy yesterday about the PowerPoint slides. No PowerPoint in the first grade. No PowerPoint. They need to be spending that time touching it, feeling it, jumping on it. Especially when I go into elementary and middle school, I hate when I go to an elementary school or a middle school, students are quiet. And you know what? Teachers go, parents will go, look how quiet that class is. All the students are on task. The students are on task. And in my mind, I'm going, no, they're not. The students are frozen. They're in freeze mode. They're in flight mode. In elementary and middle school, and even in high school, I need to hear noise. It needs to look chaotic in there. I need to hear see students walking around and looking at things and pointing at things and talking and debating and yelling and screaming at one another, because that's learning. That's the real environment. Frustration, yelling, sitting down, not just the students sitting down like good little students, listening to the teacher, doing everything the teacher said. No, I need to see some interaction. I need to see this squiggly line over here. Not this. This is not learning. This is learning. And yes, it's going to sound loud. It's going to sound chaotic. It's going to look like the teacher doesn't have any control of the class. Right? Last thing I want to go, and then I'll let you go. We'll deal with assessment tomorrow. I kind of dealt with assessment yesterday when I talked about validity and reliability, but we'll deal with that tomorrow. Okay. Tomlinson, Dr. Carol Ann Tomlinson, she's the queen. I call her the queen of differentiation. If you want to learn differentiation, listen to her audiobooks, pull her up on YouTube, listen to her little YouTube videos, Carol Ann Tomlinson. And basically her core position is that we must always be teaching up. Okay. Her core position, again, is there's no best method. All right. Her core position is that differentiation is not about giving struggling students less. All right. I want you guys to look at me here. All right. Because a lot of people think that differentiation is about giving struggling students less. No, it's not. Okay. It's not about giving struggling students less. Okay. Oh, my video is not even on. It's not about, what happened to my video? It's not about giving struggling students less. Differentiation is about meeting the struggling student where they are. Okay, it's about meeting the struggling student where they are. Where's my video? Where's, I don't even see it on it. Oh, did I unplug it? All right, you guys can hear me. It's about meeting the struggling students where they are. All right, it's not about.
All right. It's about giving them what they need to know to reach a complex goal like the rest of their classmates. All right. The teaching up principle starts at the design with the design at the top, with the most sophisticated version task, the sophistication of that task at the top. And then we build scaffolding and entry points to get them to reach the top. We have supports to get them to reach the top. Think about if you're trying to get a student to climb a ladder or climb a rope rather, right? Some students are going to be what? Able to climb the rope by themselves using their feet and their hands. Some students are going to need an MKO, a more knowledgeable other, to show them how to use their feet and their hands, and they can do it, and they're going to do it a little bit slower. Some students are going to need a little push up. Somebody going to push them their feet up, right? Push their body buttocks, push them up a little bit, and then give them instructions, right? And guess what? Some students are going to need a ladder, right? And give them they go up the ladder a little bit, and then they go up middle way, and then they go up, right? That is what differentiation is about. Differentiation is about keeping the ceiling or the top the same, but providing the appropriate supports and accommodations and scaffolding to get them to reach the top. But making sure it's not the same each time for that struggling student, so they can gain what? Independence. Because at the end of the day, it's about self-determination, self-regulation, and self-efficacy. Differentiation has 4 components, and that's content, process, product, environment. Content is the information that we use to get them to have knowledge. The process is what we do to deliver that content. The product is what they're able to produce. And the environment is how it's housed. Okay, that's differentiation. So in differentiation, you have to consider those 4 dimensions. And you have to be willing to modify the content, modify the process, modify the product, modify the environment. Differentiation is not about grouping. It's not about grouping. It's about accommodating. But make sure you're accommodating in ways where you're not creating dependency. Because every last one of those students, whether they are struggling or they're advanced, should be able to be independent by the end of your course. That's what you should be working towards. Intellectual, emotional independence. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm 8 minutes. 8 minutes outside of my allocated time. Thank you for giving me the time. I don't know why my camera is not showing, but make sure you do your exit ticket for it. There it is. Make sure you do your exit ticket for today. There's different 5 questions. Complete your exit ticket. We'll go over the exit ticket tomorrow. We'll talk about assessment, validity, reliability, and how to do holistic assessments. We talked about assessments a little bit yesterday, so we'll do that quickly. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the community aspect and the skills, talk more about skills and the school or the institution at large. How can we be change agents? Okay. Today's lesson, hopefully what you got out of today's lesson is this idea of how to unit plan, how to daily lesson plan using the SMART objectives. Okay. In a more detailed course, Okay. And the longer, like the 120-hour course that I give, I spend 2 days on what we talked about today. I will spend 2 days on lesson planning alone. But this is a basic course. So everything now I'm talking about is an overview of the bigger course. The bigger course, I'll have you actually writing a lesson plan and going through all the components of a lesson plan. All right. That's not the purpose or the intent of this course. The intent of this course is to give you an overview of what you need to know and hopefully inspire you not to take my course, but go out there and find out more information. All right. Thank you, ladies, for your time. Please complete your exit tickets, and we will see you tomorrow at is it 1 o'clock tomorrow? Or is it 1 tomorrow? I think it's 1 tomorrow. Is it 1?
It's 10 in the morning.
Good. At 10 o'clock in the morning. I knew it was a different time. So I'll see you at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we'll be finished by 1. All right. So complete your exit tickets, and we'll see you tomorrow. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Doctor.
All right. Joy, make sure I get your I guess I can just STC you back the money, right? Joy?
No,
It's Irina, not
Irene.
Joy.
Oh, Irene, I'm giving Joy your money. Jesus, I'm giving Joy your money.
It's okay. It's okay. Now you know it. Irene, it's not Joy.
Send me a message. Send me a message so I can STC you the money back. Okay.
Okay, I'll do that.
name a lot. Till
Like-
now, my name is in your mouth.
Your name is what?
Yesterday, you called my name a lot. Now, my name is stuck in your mouth.
Yes, that's what it is because I was saying your name a lot yesterday. All right. We'll see you tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Bye for now.
Bye bye.
Bye.